Hello, welcome to Ancient Ochres. We're going to be doing a deep dive today into the history and use of some of our most beautiful pigments, the ochres, and some of the other natural minerals. This is going to be a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with the research and just really excited to share with you this morning. So the way we're going to work today is I'm going to do a presentation and I'll take questions at the end. We can also do some things in chat. I won't be able to take questions while I'm doing the presentation though. And then after that, we're going to go to demonstrating how to use some of these beautiful pigments in our field journals and nature journals. And we'll be learning how to blend, and then I'm going to do an example of a little miniature landscapito using natural ochre and earth pigments. And hopefully you'll all be inspired to use these beautiful pigments in your notebooks as well. So let's get started with the presentation. I'm going to share my screen and get started. All right. Well, welcome, Ancient Ochres, Bridging Art and Science. I'm really excited about this one. I'm Roseanne Hansen. I'm the Art and Science Program Coordinator for the University of Arizona's Desert Laboratory on Tumamook Hill. I also run my own Field Arts Institute at exploringoverland.com with my husband, Jonathan, who is an expedition leader and overland travel expert. We are authors, have been writing natural history books for over 35 years. I also have written Nature Journaling for a Wildlife, which is an 8-week class in a book with its own journal pages, and we'll walk you through getting started. And a new book coming out, I hope in early 2022, called Master of Field Arts. So ochres. We all know some of the more famous human uses of ochres, such as in Lascaux, France, which date back 19,000 years before present. Here's an example from Matobo, Zimbabwe. It's about 7,000 years. Look at the beautiful detail in this, just really astonishing. There's a lot of anatomically correct animals and humans in this panel. And then moving across the globe, Sulawesi, Indonesia, a long time ago, 35,000 to 40,000 perhaps before present. Look at how they've done the spray the ochre over the handprints. And there's really beautiful colors there, the dark red, and even some looks like black pigment as well, which is probably charcoal. But then if you go another continent, you get almost the same type of design with the handprints, both sprayed around and it looks like colored in at Cueva de los Manos, Argentina, 13,000 to 9,500 before present. And this particular panel is super interesting because it shows almost all the color ranges of the ochres. The red ochre, a really orange, purple or brown ochre, and it looks like also the white, which isn't an ochre, and charcoal, probably the dark. So really fascinating panel here. Then in Australia, and this continues to be used today, many Aboriginal people, and there are a lot of groups in Australia, 30,000 years to the present is still an active art, and body painting is used by the Aboriginal people in Australia, this beautiful red ochre. And then in the Americas, in the southwestern US particularly, we've seen a lot of ochre uses for pottery, and we don't know what other things they used it for, because a lot of, say, if they used it for body painting or decorating leather, doesn't exist in the record because it disintegrates. But this is a site near Tucson that called Los Morteros, after those grinding spots. And there were active ochre mines for the Hohokam people in this region. Two known sites where they gathered ochre for their pottery in particular is what survived that we know of for sure. And that pigment there on the upper right is actually some pigment I used. I collected from a roadside in the region. So it's pretty much the same ochre to make paint. So pretty interesting that this is still a continuum. And then in Africa, and this is in Central and Southern Africa, the Himba people use and continue to use today ochre for they cover their bodies and hair and jewelry in this beautiful ochre, mix it with animal fat. It's beautiful. And then in East Africa, this is the one of the oldest known sites where ochre was actively used, processed, mined, is in Lascaux, Kenya. 200,000 years at this site, they have dated the ochre pigments they know were being worked there. Don't know for sure if it was mined there, but nearby or slightly to the north, there were definitely mines. So they would have traded, brought that in. And this was a site where they worked the ochre. And one of the uses they used it for, one of the uses of ochre was to paint their war shields. And Jonathan, my husband, and I were involved about 8 years ago with a project to record the knowledge that the elders have of how they use the pigments, how to make the shields still, and use them to paint these war shields, which these gentlemen were in their youth, all in the same age group, and that the symbols on their shields that we helped finance and recorded them making them, those were the symbols of their warrior clan when they were young men. And it was wonderful to learn and watch them. And the ochre is used there. You can see the ochre in the upper right. They mix it with cow's blood. And we'll find out later that the knowledge of using that as a binder was really quite clever. And that goes back 100, 200,000 years. So this is an amazing continuum for the human use of ochre and the science behind it. So people may say ochre is the earliest form of art and symbolism, but there's more to it than that. It shows how human brains were developing and that we were using our environment, not just using our environment, but the science of thinking about how to create paint that would last as opposed to just smearing it on from a found rock. So it bridges the divide between art and science, which is like completely what I geek out on. I just love that. And that was archaeologist Tammy Hodgskiss quoted that in an article. So before we go any further, though, we need to define what is a pigment, because that's going to inform how we learn about the human use of earth pigments to make paint and other and body ornament, things like that. So a pigment is a colored substance that is either organic, which is formed from complex carbon chemistry and are synthetically derived. That's right. And inorganic, which are native earths with iron or other metals, ochres, siennas, umbers, and minerals such as azurite, malachite, chrysocolla, lapis, and so on. There's a lot of different ones. That is inorganic. Now, it seems counterintuitive that something natural would be inorganic and synthetic is called organic. That is just the way this chemistry is set up. And it's because organic pigments are based on carbon rings or carbon chains, whereas inorganic are not based on carbon and could consist of metal oxides or other naturally occurring ingredients. So that's an important distinction we're going to be learning about more. And this brings us to oxides. ferrous and otherwise, because other metal elements do oxidize. And if you'll remember from your high school chemistry, iron, the shorthand symbol is Fe in the periodic table. It's the fourth most abundant element by mass in the Earth's crust. That's super cool. And by the way, just showing the picture in the background, we'll see more of this. That is an ancient ochre mine in traditional lands in the Northwest Territories, Australia. It's a really neat place we visited. You are not allowed to go into that, but you can park on the edge, and it's a visitor area. And I was able to just put my finger in a piece that was, in the parking area that was getting run over. So I wasn't violating any of the important rules not to go in there, and I didn't collect any. But that is still used today for collection and trading amongst Aboriginal people for their art, for their body paint, for their ceremonies. So it's very cool. So iron is the fourth most abundant element. But let's not forget the red planet, of course. And check this out. The alchemical symbol for iron is that symbol, which is synonymous with the same alchemical symbol for Mars. So the red planet, we all know, is that the surface is composed of a lot of iron oxide, which is why it's red. All right, now let's really drill down and learn about the actual chemical structure of all the different ochres. And it's important to learn this because then we'll know what we are collecting, what we're buying, and understand how it's formed in the earth. So yellow ochre, the formula for it is FeOOHNH2O, and that means it is a hydrated iron, meaning it has water moisture in it, and it's called limonite. And that you'll see in the formula, the H2O means it's hydrated. But then brown ochre, which is a color for sure, called goethite, the symbol you'll see it's the same, the formula FeOOH, but there's no H2O because it's only partly hydrated. So the color has a shift because of that. And then red ochre is a little more complex. Fe2O3 gains its red from hematite, another mineral, which is unhydrated, anhydrous iron oxide, hence the red. And then the purple ochre, interestingly, is exactly the same formula. It's Fe2O3, but it has slightly different light diffraction properties, larger particle sizes. So it looks different, and it is quite purpley. It's quite beautiful. Now, here's something super interesting, because we all know about the siennas and umbras and things, but what are they? So sienna is limonite, which is yellow ochre, but it has manganese oxide in it, manganese being another element, but less than 5%, which makes it darker than red ochre. So your sienna is slightly different than red ochre. Umber is the same, limonite, yellow ochre, with more manganese. So it's even darker and more brown. And then, those of you who are thinking ahead, sienna and umber are heated, and then they are dehydrated. Some of the limonite is then transformed into hematite. It metamorphoses, giving them more reddish colors. And that's burnt sienna and burnt umber. So super, super interesting there, how that process is. And the heating can happen in nature, perhaps, but more commonly in a like the paint manufacturing process. They will heat it to dehydrate it and turn the limonite into hematite. Then here's some great, like, esoteric, interesting other ochres. A known ochre called green ochre, glauconite, or terre verte. Look at that complicated formula. Oh my gosh. It is an iron potassium phyllosilicate in the mica group. Really cool color. Then blue ochres called vivianite. It's very dark blue usually. Another very complicated hydrated ferrous phosphate. And as it gets exposed to more air, it gets even darker. So sometimes it's almost black. But then the real true black is magnetite, which is one of my favorite pigments and pretty common to find actually. And it is magnetic indeed, very magnetic, meaning magnetic iron, Fe3O4. So an oxidized magnetic iron. And then this is an outlier, but fun, because you can get graphite paint from green leaf blueberry, and it is carbon. It is not iron, and it is a crystalline form of the element carbon, and its atoms are arranged in a hexagonal structure. It's sparkly and really pretty. And it's not a compound, and it's typically considered a mineral. And by definition, a mineral can't be organic, so it is an inorganic element. It's unique in that carbon forms more compounds than all of the other elements combined. Think about that. So it's super important to everything that we do. Okay, so now the fun part. What turns rocks and dirt into paint? So what makes paint? Let's take a look at that so that we can understand how this behaves on our paper or leather or whatever we're doing with our pigments. So paint means you take pigment particles suspended in a medium. So that can be water for watercolor, oil for oil paint, egg for casein, or acrylic polymer for acrylic paint. And then you blend that with a binder, and that's what helps paint adhere to surfaces. And for watercolor, it's often gum arabic, which is from the Acacia Senegal in sub-Saharan Africa. And so this is kind of the science of how people learn to create, find, experiment with binders to make these pigments stick to the surfaces they want to decorate. So paint needs a humectant usually to keep that pigment from crumbling and drying up. So it's often honey. A dispersant is often used to help prevent clumping of the pigment and increase flow across the surface. It's called a wetting agent, and that's often oxgall, which is literally the substance from the gallbladder of a cow. And then some people add fungicides to suppress mold and bacteria. Honey does it pretty well. Clove oil is used. Then, so the pigment, before you add all those extra ingredients, is ground fine into a powder. The grinding process is separate from what's called the mulling process. And there's a lot of misinformation on like YouTube videos and stuff about like when it shows people mulling the paint, they say they're grinding the pigment. You're not reducing the particle size during the mulling process, which is taking those glass mullers and a glass sheet. If you're doing this in an industrial environment, then they're giant roller machines that run the substance through these rollers that get smaller and smaller and smaller in width between each other. But you do it by hand with a muller. And what you're doing is taking the substance that you've created, the binder, the humectant, and all of that, and you're binding it literally to the particles. And the smaller the particle size is, the more you have to mull, because you just got to make sure all of your binder is adhering to all the particles so it doesn't flake off your paper. So grinding and mulling are separate processes. So interesting. That process hasn't changed in the basic process in 1,000 millennia, right? 100,000 years ago. It was discovered in Blombos Cave, South Africa. There were two sets of these tools there on the lower left. An abalone shell, and in it was a prepared solution of ochre pigment, and on top of it was the mulling stone. And this is where the science comes in, because it was clear that the people making this ochre paint had figured out that they could cook and extract marrow from animal bones, and that created a gelatinous binder that allowed the pigment to stick better on the cave walls. So absolutely fascinating that long ago we figured out, I mean, these are early proto-humans, really, the science to do that. So it shows our brains being scientists and artists. And at Olorgesailie, Kenya, the rocks on the right there, those show the red ochre, though that was being used to process and make stuff from the ochre pigment there. And that was 200,000 years it's been dated to, at least. So absolutely fabulous human continuum here of art and science using ochres. So as I said earlier, that this shows that human continuum there. In the project that we worked on in Kenya was only about 20 kilometers from Olorgesailie. So there is that modern human knowledge continues. They know how to make the paint from the ochre, how to make that black. They made from charcoal. They took cow bones. They knew how to make a low oxygen or really very, very slow burning fire. So we get the superfine pigment, mix that for paint. And we also, they purchased the white, which is a clay from a local quarry, and so on. So that was just fascinating. And then in the American Southwest, the continuum, Lee and Florinda Valle are Acoma, and they make pottery the way their ancestors have for millennia, the ancient way, and color it with local pigments. We bought this pot, and they gave us you can see the rocks there. These are the rocks from which they make the glazes when they fire these pots, from local rock pigments. And Florinda paints them with yucca fiber, that's a plant, brush, and she uses a stone painting palette that's been passed on through at least 3 generations in her family. So that beautiful continuum of using ochres in art. Now, here we come to the important part in how we use it. And the big question is, modern ochres and earth pigment paints, are they natural or synthetic? And there's some important info here. This is where I learned a lot. Most iron oxide artists' paints, the ones with words like sienna, umber, ochre, in around 2002, because of international supply and so on, because of the volume of artist grade paints that are sold through places like Winsor Newton, Daniel Smith, it went from natural iron oxide clays to synthetic iron oxide powders. So they're iron oxides, but they're made in a laboratory. And the way we have been able to drill down on some of this, and it's important to know this, is there's a standardized color index for all pigment colors for the industry. And this includes like house paint, car paint, artist paint, etc. It's called Color Index International, and it was established in 1925 by the Society of Dyers and Colorists in England and with the American Association of Textile Chemists and Colorists. So for example, every paint has assigned this multi-letter number system. So PY3 is pigment yellow, PY, number 3. And then each company brands it with a different name. So think of it as like the genus and species name for a plant, because there's lots of different common names of different plants, but it's the same genus and species. So Hansa Yellow Light by Daniel Smith or Da Vinci is the same as Lemon Yellow by Sennelier or Utrecht, PY3. And here's an example of Daniel Smith's information sheets about their paints. It'll tell you, is it staining, granulating, transparent, etc. But also there, where I've circled it, PY3. That's the genus and species of that, hence the yellow. And if you look at all the others in the yellows, from like nickel, bismuth, azo, etc., they have different numbers. So PY53 is nickel yellow, PY151 is azo yellow, etc. But if you look at the one on the far left, buff titanium, it has multiple codes. So PW, I think, is white, because it's considered titanium white. 6.:1, it's an amalgamation of several different pigments. So it's not a pure single pigment. And so you'll see, like in Danthrone blue, I can't remember all the numbers that go with that one, but it is not a single pigment. It's a mix of blues and I think black. So for example, PBR7 is pigment brown number 7, which is sienna, burnt sienna, umber in this system. And PY43, pigment yellow 43, yellow ochre, raw sienna. Remember how they change. And it's really like these natural earth pigments are, I'll be showing you, they're so variable in their color. In the PY43 is going to look different across many different paint manufacturers. And it's partly because there's no consensus on differentiating true earth from synthetic earth pigments. Even though sometimes they'll put N in there, it's still not standardized, and they're not probably going to, because it's not as important with these natural pigments. So interestingly, there's just no standardization. So many watercolors now labeled PBR7 or PY43 are synthetic iron oxide rather than natural. But there are natural ones still out there and available, and I'll be talking about them in just a minute. So for example, these are natural earth pigments in one of my little mini kits that I use. Some of them are handmade by me. That purple ochre I collected in the Tucson Mountains is beautiful. I'll show you a swatch of it. It's wildcrafted. And then lapis lazuli from the great colorist in London, Cornelissen and Son. I handmade that. And that's pure lapis lazuli. And then from Greenleaf and Blueberry, a wonderful handmade paint makers in Colorado, Jess Greenleaf and her husband make these amazing natural pigments, and their website verifies that they only use natural pigments. They don't use synthetic iron oxides or other. So that's graphite, yellow ochre, and red ochre from Greenleaf and Blueberry. And that little painting there is painted with those colors from that little palette. More from Greenleaf and Blueberry, some really cooler, rarer minerals, malachite, azurite. There's the Vivianite, it's almost black. Remember, that's the blue ochre. And then pipestone, which is on my swatch list, I'll show you, is actually a clay with a bunch of other stuff, and a little bit of iron oxide to give it the red. And then here's the the graphite in use. I wanted to get that stone has lots of mica sparkles in it, and I was painting that, so I used, I think, magnetite, and then I brushed it with the graphite, and you can see the sparkles. So it's really fun to add things like that to your nature journals, field notebooks. So let's compare some synthetic and natural, and you can see how they are different. Okay, here's on the left here, these are synthetic earth minerals from major manufacturers. So Winsor Newton yellow ochre, burnt sienna from Daniel Smith, raw umber from Daniel Smith, and then burnt umber from Daniel Smith. So you'll see that the limonite was metamorphosed under heat into hematite, and so it has a redder quality, even though it started out the same mineral. And then in the natural earth side, here's yellow ochre from greenleaf and blueberry, yellow ochre from natural earth pigments, painted desert. This was a yellow ochre I wild crafted from the painted desert in central Arizona. I collected from road cuts where this landscape has these red, rose, and yellow bands running through them. It's just stunning. And then the next one is actually a quaternary dune sample, wild crafted from Point Reyes in California. Very, very pretty. That has like gold sparklies in it. And here's some more. Let's look at these. These are natural earth, greenleaf and blueberries, brown ochre. And then they're red ochre, which is super rich and beautiful. And then here's the wild crafted red from the painted desert. Very similar, a little browner. And then the painted desert rose color, I called it. And then the Rattlesnake Pass, it's kind of an orangey ochre. It doesn't show as orange there than it was, and I think it's oxidized a bit more because when I first ground it, it was very orangey. That is the from near where the Hohokam mine for ochre was. And then this really rich red from the Chiricahua Mountains. Here's another like an orange from Onion Creek in Utah, Burnt Mountain red, which is almost a purple ochre. I really think it's more toward the purple from Namibia. Very close to the violet hematite from greenleaf and blueberry. And then here's Clearwell Caves, which is a famous site in England. I think it's like between 4,000 to 6,000 years ago, they think. Dates back has been mined. The ochre there has been mined in this iron-rich area, and they sell pigment under the Clearwell Caves, where you can go visit. Beautiful purple ochre. They also sell red and yellow. And then my Tucson Mountains purple, and then pipestone, which is, let me look up, pipestone is called, it's got in it catlinite, clay, pyrophyllite, and hematite. So pipestone is literally famous for, it's a soft rock that is carved into pipes by Native American groups, and it's highly prized for their pipes. And then just here's some more samples I wanted to show of malachite, beautiful green, the celadonite, very dark, gritty green, lapis lazuli from Cornelissen, and Sleeping Beauty turquoise from Daniel Smith. Sleeping Beauty is a very famous turquoise, gem grade turquoise, and the mine which is no longer operating, is north of me in central Arizona. Then the next row or column, that's Castle Earth from greenleaf and blueberry, and that's famous as it's known. It has been known for a long time, couple centuries, as Van Dyke Brown, and it's iron, manganese, and lignites. So those are oxides. And then magnetite's one of my favorite. And I have the sand from it is super sparkly. The magnetite I gathered in northern Mexico. That magnetite is actually, it's in a area in northern Mexico that's sand dunes. And the dunes are called Aeolian dunes, Aeolian. Aeolian means they were formed over millions of years from wind bringing in grit from the north, from dirt, from central Arizona, where like the red rocks of Sedona, and deposited in northern Mexico. And so they're pink. And the magnetite has the substrate when you mix it there with a light rose underneath. So it's really pretty. You can see it there. And then below that is magnetite from greenleaf and blueberry. and then they're graphite. And then there's another cool little project. Women, 3 soil scientists got together, and they create paint from soils they collect from all over in their work. It's called For the Love of Soil. It's a wonderful, wonderful way to get some cool ochre paints. Much easier to get than green leaf and blueberry, which is highly competitive. Whenever she restocks her store, she usually sells out in a few hours. But For the Love of Soil, there's some examples there of deep brown. These are all from Wyoming when I bought these. Prairie ochre, prairie orange, which is really pretty, and then Niobrara orange, which looks more like a yellow ochre to me. Really cool. Okay, whoops. Wanted to mention, going back to this, looking at the azurite malachite paint from greenleaf blueberry. If you look at the rock itself that I was painting, I wanted to depict this incredible colors. I could have gotten a much more true to life, like the colors were just so vibrant. I could have done a really vibrant job with transparent watercolors, like my Daniel Smith, phthalo blue, phthalo green, like super pool pop. But I wanted to paint it with the actual azurite malachite. And that's kind of why we're doing this. It's this wonderful sense of place and history that you get using these natural pigments. So wanted to talk about Daniel Smith's Primatech line, which is real famous. And I consider it kind of the best of both of natural pigments and synthetic, because there's some controversy you'll read about on the website handprint.com. And I think some people shared in the chat wet canvas discussion about it. Many people feel that the Daniel Smith Primatech line, which is gorgeous, and I think I have an example here of their, I'll be showing this in a minute, but here's their dot card. I'll show are, like amethyst and rhodonite and malachite, hematite, garnet, things like that. And they're these beautiful colors, but in order to produce at the volume that they do, and they're spread beautifully and they behave beautifully. Most people think that they also have synthetic elements to it, and they don't claim to be 100% all amethyst, for example, because that just wouldn't be possible. You wouldn't get the beautiful flowy color that they get. So that's okay. I consider it the best of both. And here's an example. I used the rhodonite to get that beautiful iridescence color of the Anna's hummingbird gorget. So you can do some really beautiful painting with I love their Sleeping Beauty turquoise. So here's some of the examples of their Primatech, the amethyst. Look at the diopside green or the apatite. Oh my gosh, those are so beautiful. And there's all sorts of gorgeous colors you can play with. Some of them, the other thing that clued me off that some of these have some synthetic elements is that they behave really nicely on the paper, they flow, and then they also mix with other colors to create colors, other colors. And a lot of the natural pigments don't do that. They just kind of go I try to mix lapis lazuli with a blue to get, with a yellow to get green, and it just turns gray. It's not, it is a pure pigment. So very, very interesting. I just love learning things like that. And they're so fun to play with. So now we're going to go to actually play with these earth colors and see how they perform. And we will do some paint samples, and then I'll do a little landscape detail that we can play with. Okay, now we're going to look at some of the properties in real time. I'm going to show you some blends that I did, and I'll show you sort of how natural pigments act on the paper, and also do an example of pigments, synthetic pigments, and how they differ. And then we'll get to our landscape detail. And one thing I'll do if you guys don't know this already, when you're getting ready to work with paints, I spray them with a little bit of water so that they behave better. So I'm going to do that real quick. It refreshes them, wakes them up, just makes them a little more active. Okay, now let's switch to the document camera. You can see here all the earth pigments I have in my set here. Green leaf blueberry, I have a lot of my wildcrafted ones, and here's some of the samples I've done. I'm going to zoom in a minute there. One thing I wanted to mention, when you're working with earth pigments, if you use them a lot in your sketches, paintings, in your notebooks or what have you, use a brush that you don't really care about or is inexpensive, like this water brush, or use a synthetic brush or inexpensive one. If you use your really good expensive sables, or like my favorite squirrel brush, travel brush, there's, it's really gritty and very hard on the fibers of your brush. So I use an inexpensive brush for that. So let's zoom in here a little more so you can see and change the there, so we can see this a little better. So here's some examples of what I was talking about earlier, of blending. So for example, here's Sleeping Beauty turquoise versus lapis, and how they blended with the yellow ochre. So I could blend Sleeping Beauty with the yellow ochre and get this beautiful green. If I do so with lapis, I get a beautiful gray. So it's a different relationship. So the pure lapis pigment doesn't really blend with much. It did blend well with the pipestone to create a rose, but with garnet to create a purple. So interesting, two fully natural didn't really make a new color, but the garnet, which probably has some synthetic components as well as garnet, with the lapis created purple. And the pipestone it just basically gave the pipestone a little bit more of a mauve-y tone. And interestingly, the Sleeping Beauty with the pipestone created a beautiful blue-gray. Check that out. Gorgeous blue-gray, real shimmery, or a lot of depth to it. So that's kind of experiment with what you have, and you'll learn how they behave. For example, the yellow ochre with malachite created this gorgeous yellow green. And what I love about the way a lot of the natural pigments behave is that they get this, can go marbly, because there's a lot of texture and it's beautiful. I love that. Now here I showed, I'm going to redo these so you can see how these pigments behave. So let's start with the Winsor Newton yellow ochre, which is a synthetic. And see, it flows beautifully, and it's got lovely texture. It's very smooth and flows and colors beautifully. And an interesting comparison is the green leaf blueberry, very similar tone. I think it's richer color and has a little more texture. But so similar though, look at that. But in the end, I think there's a little more texture in the green leaf blueberry. They do such a beautiful job with their blending and their binders that these two are so similar. Now here's an interesting contrast. The Earth Pigment brand, that is natural, let's see, Earth Pigment brand? Naturalpigment.com. We'll look that up put that in the chat. I made this from this is their yellow ochre. It's very, very dark. and has a lot of granulation, meaning it's just got all sorts of beautiful texture. Now, did you see that in these natural pigments? See how you can move the pigment around? It's not like transparent watercolors where, boy, if you disturb the pigment after you put it down, it just can ruin that beautiful transparency. But that's what I love about these ochre pigments, or any of the natural pigments, is it, I love the way it moves around, and you can go in later and alter these, like by re-wetting it and actually changing the tone and texture, a lot like the transparent. But again, it's really, really cool. I love that. Let's look at, doing the marbly thing. So if I lay down a yellow ochre, maybe, let's see, lighten that up just a little. Green leaf blueberry yellow ochre, and let's put malachite in that so you can see. I'm going to drop it right into it, and you get this really, so you can see the colors blending. It's really beautiful. And like here's the pure malachite. Isn't that beautiful? And I love how this mottled green look, and you see how the malachite, boy, it's very grainy. So there, I used more water. Look at that, how it moves. So you have to learn how to work with that. And you're going to see that in the landscape Pito demo. These are the Clearwell Caves purple ochre and violet hematite from greenleaf blueberry. They're almost identical. Beautiful, beautiful pigments. So that's just an example of how we work with these natural pigments. I particularly like the lapis lazuli for doing skies, because it's so easy to work with, to create. So let's blend this edge to create kind of fluffy clouds. I would probably let it dry more even. Creates beautiful variegated skies, from very dark blue to these pale, like cirrus type. Love that, love that. Or if you really wanted just a beautiful deep blue sky as it gets paler at the horizon. A little streaky, so it takes some practice to get this so it's not super streaky. And if I take a tissue to that, I can create some clouds if I want to go in and clean that up, create some fluffy clouds, maybe drop in some gray, like so. So you can see that, it's really fun. So I love the lapis for that. All right, well, now we're going to switch to doing our skyscape or landscape, excuse me, and do an actual landscape. So I'm going to be showing you a picture of the Chiricahua Mountains. Let me turn this off here. I'll be showing you a photo of the Chiricahua Mountains where I actually gathered the rock and turned it into pigment and then paint. And that is my, let's see, pull this out, what I call Chiricahua ochre. And it's a beautiful, beautiful color. And we'll use that and choose some other colors for our landscape. All right. I'm not going to be able to show you the photo I was going to. We're just going to do a landscape, and you'll just have to trust me that it's the Chiricahua Mountains, okay? And just show you how I would use these colors in in my field notes, in my nature journal. Great. We'll make this a little landscape-ito. And feel free to just make up your own landscape, and let's just practice as we go. So this is a little, it's a beautiful red ochre cliffs. So I'm just going to do very quick, and it's not going to be a perfect rendition because we want to spend our time just sort of, actually I'm going to get this, the cliff line here. You know, we just basically make up something so that we can play. Play with our rock paints, which is so much fun. These have like they're like buttes. They have a lot of striations, and they're really like friable rock. And then it just sort of, you've got vegetation coming up the hills, right up, and maybe some rocks sticking out, big boulders. And then the rest are this is like junipers and piñons. And this is earth here, like so. And then there's like, these are a little farther away. And there's a big like slab. And these are just sort of slabs of that rock. And again, the vegetation just kind of comes right up. I think we had a dead tree in here. So as just sort of piece of interest. And I'm more or less making it up so we can play with paint. And then there were some evergreen shapes in here, some larger, closer thickets of different colored, much closer vegetation, and then some big, beautiful oak trees in here. And I'm demarcating those because they had a different color green, so we can experiment. Really quick and dirty here. All right, let's add another boulder in here. That one looked lonely. Okay. Let's play with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is, there was a really beautiful blue sky with some streaky clouds, and I'm going to do that with the lapis. Oops. Let's bring so you guys can see my paints. I pulled out, here's my Chiricahua ochre. Let's do you know about the little trick of doing like little colorways of, here are the colors we're going to be using. This is my Chiricahua orange ochre. I'm using green leaf and blueberry yellow ochre. I'll be mixing using Sleeping Beauty turquoise as well as lapis.
Where is the Sleeping Beauty turquoise from again?
That is Daniel Smith Primatech.
Oh, okay.
And it is named after, and supposedly some of the properties of it come from the Sleeping Beauty turquoise mine in central Arizona. It's a very famous type of pure gem grade turquoise that's just this gorgeous blue that the only other blue that turquoise that's that perfect and beautiful it's from Iran, from Persia. So you'll see Persian turquoise. I think some of Queen Elizabeth's crowns have that in it. So let's do the excuse me. Let's do the sky. And the advantage of that I really like with using the lapis for the sky is it moves around so nicely, so I can create those clouds. So I'm wetting it first. And it's one of the things I love about natural pigments is the way you can move them around and very low staining. So let's put some across the top here. I'm going to leave some clouds. And they were kind of these streaky. And I've got clean water here, and I'm just going to soften those edges. So it makes a really pretty, that's very common color for a southwestern sky too. Let's see what happens when I mix the yellow ochre. So I want to maybe show you how we might get some green. You see, when I touched that, it streaked it. So if I want this to stay nice, I need to stop touching it, and I can go back later and re-wet it, maybe, and pull some white. But what happens when I put yellow with this blue? See, that turned brown instead of green with the lapis. So lapis doesn't really like to play with yellow ochre. So I'm going to, it's kind of a browny green. But if I use the Sleeping Beauty, which I believe has better mixing qualities because of some of the elements in it with the yellow ochre, we can get a really pretty green there. Like so. But the first thing I'll do so it can dry is let's drop in some of that. I'll leave that there. The other thing about the natural pigments is it's really easy to work with. I can leave that there for a long time and it stays really useful. Here's my handmade Chiricahua. This rock is the same rock as in here. Now, I'm going to not color in solid. For now, I'm just, because if we looked back on the photograph, we would see there's actually some really dramatic lichen green, a really bright green lichen. So I'm going to see if I can get a licheny color going here. Or, yeah, let's see. If I would do that by maybe adding a little more, am I going to use just my natural pigments, or am I going to pull in some other ones? I could pull in, this is really yellowy green. What does that look like? See, it doesn't pop, does it? So what if I just used a tiny bit of the malachite, or malachite? Yeah, this is green leaf and blueberry malachite to get some of that licheny color. The green lichen is a really common phenomenon on this type of rock. I'm going to leave it kind of mottly like that. And then maybe I want to get some, let's make some, I know. I can either use the lapis to make a kind of gray, that worked. And then I can add some shadows. These were really far away, so I'm going to push those back. So the blue and the red made a gray that worked. And maybe I want to fill in the rest with kind of a brown. Do I have a brown that would work? Let's use the ancient California quaternary deposit brown. What is that? Yeah, that we can use to fill in. And this has a little sparkle to it, which is kind of cool. So rather than just color it solid with itself, it's better to keep it variegated, I think. And again, what I love about this is I can just dab right in it and get some really nice color. And if I don't like it, I can move it around because it doesn't stick. It's not staining. So I'm going to leave that for now because I can play with it plenty later. And then I'm going to populate some of the green. So this is going to be like, I'm going to make this the darkest green. This oak here. And if I really want to darken it up some more, I can, well, first let me get rid of what I've got here. I'm going to spread this out so it's not as thick, if you will. I want to pull in some blue to darken this green. I can't use the lapis, that doesn't play well. So what I'm going to pull in is one of the, where did my Mayan colors go? Oh, right in front of me. I'm going to pull in a Mayan violet. And I'll talk about Mayan colors in just a minute. This is Mayan blue with the yellow ochre. Oops, I just spattered So I'm going to get some of the Sleeping Beauty. A little bit. So I want like little dark bits in here. Maybe I'll just drop the blue directly. Oh, that worked better. Get some shadows in there. So there's also a pine tree in here that's really bluey green. So I can just lay that Mayan blue right on top. And now that pops nicely. So I'm getting lots of cool colors in here. Oh, you know what I forgot to do is I forgot to, those are these are the same rocks. So let me quick give those, they're red. And is there enough gray left here? Do some shadow. Nope, not enough. So lapis plus the red gave me a gray. Not enough. To give them a little definition. All right, now the rest of it, I want these to be lighter. That really, I want that to fade way back. And I don't want it to be like totally uniform. Now here's what you do with these natural pigment colors. See how I'm dotting? I'm laying in that it's full of pigment because it's very, you know, real heavy on the texture. So if I pick it up and dot, 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 I get more. I can create that texture quickly. So what I'm looking for here is just a way to get a lot of texture back in there. And you do that by creating lots of different, a number of different colors because it's not a uniform thing. But I don't want it to be super strong because I need it to look like it's in the distance. So I can load up on the pigment here. Oops, I'm obscuring it, sorry. Let me try to do that sideways. Load up on the pigment and literally touch it in. There. So now I really like the way that looks. I need a dark, let's use the magnetite. The really dark to give this tree a little bit more. It was a dead tree. And we're almost pretty much done. There. So that was just a quick demo of how you can use, how you can use the natural pigments to do quick place-based landscape details. This is a little too colorful here, so you can go in and see how I can just remove that. And I love that about the natural colors. If I got that a little wrong. So love that. That just kind of worked quick. That's a quick and easy way to do that. So let's see, any comments, other ideas? No, let's see what's in the chat. Okay, is there a color shift when the natural pigments dry? Not really. What you see is generally what you get, which makes it, again, a little easier to paint with than the transparent watercolors, which can change. So as we know, let me show you the Mayan. Let me talk about the Mayan colors for just a quick sec, and then we'll be wrapping up soon. So these are the Mayan colors, and these are all from green leaf and blueberry. And Mayan colors so Mayan blue and red are real pigments used by the Mayans. And they were developed, they're basically plant-based dyes that they learned how to bind them to a clay from their region to create paints. And Mayan blue is particularly famous because they took this Mayan blue, which is a really gorgeous color. Let's see. This is Mayan blue. There's Mayan blue 2 and Mayan blue 1. Gorgeous color. It's made from the indigo plant and a special clay right from that region. And they used to paint the victims of their sacrifices, human victims of sacrifice, all blue, and then toss them into these, their deep water wells called cenotes. And today they've been able to measure the depth of the blue pigment in the bottom of these cenotes to be meters thick. So lots of sacrifice, kind of gruesome. The red is a beautiful earthy red. Whoa, my water brush just did a complete dump. Look at that. I'm not a huge fan of water brushes, but look at that beautiful color. That is made from the plant achiote seeds, which is also a culinary spice. So Mayan colors are beautiful, and they mix really well with the natural pigments to make enhance your paints. So for example, a yellow ochre, I'm just mixing right on the page, does a really pretty blue-green there. And one thing you can do to get really cool effects with natural pigments is this dropping in colors and then sort of leaving them to maybe even adding a drop of water. Oops, it's a bit much, but that's going to flare out, and because of the heavy pigmentation, it's going to leave really cool patterns, and you can move it around and play with it and not get in as much trouble as you would with transparent watercolors. That's going to dry really cool. So that was just a little side thing on the Mayan. So let me stop share. Nope. Not stop share, change video. Okay. All right, let's go to gallery view. If you want to turn on your videos and ask questions, raise your hand. We can go from there. Anyone want to make comment, share things? Let's spend the last, Jean, please go.
I'm curious now about the plant-based dyes and what the paint making process. Can you use those for paint as well as the natural things? As the
That's
clay things?
very difficult to do. I don't know how one would do that at home because you have to extract the dye. I don't know how to do that with plants. And then it has to be bound to the substrate, the substance to make it become a pigment. So it's got to be a clay that you can bind the dye to in order to carry it onto paper, rather than an ink. So an
I've
ink.
used natural dyes for wool a lot for yarn.
Exactly. So how to get that to bind to clay, I don't know the process. It's a whole other animal.
So clay is always the basis, it
I
sounds like.
don't, it is only for the only one I know about is Mayan colors.
Right. Okay, thank you. I was getting all excited.
I know. Do some research. There's some great papers on the Mayan process. It's highly studied. And so
Yeah.
you can see how they do it, because Mayans invented it, so they didn't have fancy laboratories.
Right.
So we don't know. So
Okay, thank you.
sure. Annette.
Yeah, so I have two questions. You'd mentioned optiote seeds. How do you spell that?
I'll put it in the chat. It's
Okay.
achiote.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And it's actually achiote is what it's known as the spice. I use it in some sauces. They're hard red seeds, and just Google achiote seeds.
Okay.
And you can get it from Penzeys Spice or many of the spice places, and it's ground up. Now, turning that into a dye, though, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So my second question then is, I'm gonna go to Arizona next week and to Tempe area, and I'm wondering, do you have a list of places that you can collect things to make pigments?
Okay, so I don't have a specific list, but you will see as you're like driving up toward the Superstition Mountains, for example, to the east of Phoenix, stay on, national or state roads, and you can collect right there from like road cuts, roadsides. Just don't go on private property, and don't collect on national forest and parks. Some BLM and forests do allow small scale collecting of rocks. It's called rock hounding. So as long as you're not taking pounds and pounds of material and you're not using hand tools, it's legal on most national forests and BLM. But roadsides are easy and legal. So just don't go digging, someone's gonna.
Sure.
And besides, let me just show you. So, this rock will make several of these, and this lasts a really long time. So you don't need a lot.
You're collecting rocks and not necessarily loose soil.
You're going to want to collect soil, and then I outline a way you can, the easiest way to get quick pigment from soil is to put it in solution, put it in water, stir it up, and find soil that has, like, when you stick your hand in it and you rub it around, it comes away colored and there's lots of dust. Look for dusty, like lots of degraded soil. Put it in water and then pour it over one of the paper coffee filters slowly. And as it fills up in the coffee filter, tilt that around so the soil, the lightest soil gathers on the edges, and then let it dry, and you can scrape off the lightest. The heavy is going to go to the bottom, and make sure you just keep swirling it. And that's the easiest way to do it. And then you can experiment with gum arabic and mulling it, and just use the bottom of a glass or something.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's fun to just experiment. And then if you get totally hooked, you can buy the expensive processing stuff, like a real muller, which is going to cost about $100 with the plate. and then sieves and grinders and things. I bought a grinder and a crusher, an ore crusher. It's small, and it's used by those people who go out and grind up rocks around gold mines trying to find gold dust. So great. Deirdre.
Yes, two things. One is we can't show our video until you open it up for us. I tried to like go to video.
That was probably because I closed it. Yeah, some people
Right.
can, some people can't. Sorry.
That's all right. I don't want to see myself. But second thing was, can you buy the Mayan color somewhere? Do you recommend a
Yes.
particular place?
Greenleaf and Blueberry has
Oh.
beautiful Mayan colors, and I believe Daniel Smith has all of them.
Okay,
Daniel Smith has really nice ones. Let me look.
great, thanks.
Yeah, Daniel Smith has Mayan blues, reds, yellow.
Very cool.
And hopefully no one's still using Mayan blue for sacrifices. Any other, Charlotte says in the chat, achiote seeds just mix with water to paint your cheeks or lips or hands. So yeah, you soak it, or you could soak it in an oil, but then it would be oil paint. That's how I use it in the kitchen. I soak it in oil and then grind it in a spice grinder. Great. Any other comments, ideas? Sorry about the funky glitch in the middle. Great. Well, this was tons of fun. I will stick the two videos together and we'll have a complete video, and I'll put all the resources and go through the chat and pull out all those resources for the website. So I'll send that out probably tomorrow. Ray Bonto, yes.
Yes, that ochre chemistry page.
Thank you. I'm going to share that right now. Thank you very much. Where'd it go? Okay, that's in here. Can you see that, Ray Bonto?
Cool.
Oh, I have to
Yes.
say play now. Okay. Let me just back it up. Almost there. Okay, I'm gonna, oops, these are going to go fade. Which one did you want to get? The
Black.
okay. Blue. There we go.
Oh.
It's a ferrous oxide and it's Fe3 iron 3 oxygen 4O4 Fe3O4. If you can get some magnetite, it's really fun to play with. Put the paint on your page and then stick a magnet underneath and you can pull it around. Let's see, Valerie, yes.
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for this morning. This just opens up a whole new world.
Oh,
And,
fun.
and I don't know that I'll actually be creating natural pigments, but if I can buy them somewhere, I will. And because, oh my gosh, the color, I was doing some swatches while you were talking, and man, they're gorgeous. They're just gorgeous.
Aren't they fun? Yeah, there's some great places to get. For the love of soil and beam paints, those are in the chat. We will put those on the resources. Great places to buy from. They're all women-owned businesses and super cool.
Great. Well, thank you for all your work for today.
You're welcome. Thank you all for coming. Annette, yes, would.
Sorry, just one more question.
Sure.
Can you remind us what notebook setup do you use? Because it looks like in some of the photos that you were showing, you have use loose leaf paper and then put it in a notebook. I love that idea.
Yeah, so I have a kind of a tutorial on how I made this. Is like more than 25 years old. It's just cowhide, and the paper is laced in, and you can add any kind of paper, pockets, what have you. It's just 3 holes and it's standard holes, 9x6. Although my 9x6 is getting harder to find, but you can do 8.5 by 5.5, which is more common. And then I archive them in 3-ring binders. So
Thank you. That is genius.
I love it. I started doing it a long time ago. I love it. It's also stiff enough. I can hold it and sketch as I walk, just like so.
Yeah.
So
And you
it
use
works.
watercolor paper.
Yes, I use 90-pound watercolor paper and just drill my own holes. So it's very inexpensive as well. And I'm not worried if I spent $40 on a journal that every page makes me crazy because I'm afraid I'm going to ruin it if I mess up. If I mess up on this, I go.
That's totally my issue.
I mean, look, it gets nice and gnarly over time, right? But it's been with me for decades. So
Very cool.
yeah, and I have a tutorial on my website on it. If you go to the blog, on the right-hand side of the blog, it says Nature Journal and Kit tutorials, and it'll take you to a page with all of them. If you can't find it, email me.
Okay, thanks. I guess I missed that.
Sure. Any other, let's see. Sorry, parrot. Someone's parrot typed in the chat. That's a new one. Cressida, that's awesome. I'd like to know what the parrot said. Okay, everybody. Well, we're 1 minute past noon. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and I will get this recording out tomorrow. I have to spend the afternoon helping my mom, so I won't be able to do it this afternoon. So thank you, everyone. One quick thing. I do always try to remind people too, if you like these free tutorials, I have a tip jar on the website, and I'm putting that in the chat, and I'll put that in the email as well. It's a secure system. You don't have to use Google Pay or Apple Pay. You just keep going, and there's a credit card too. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. This was fun. I'm now like all about playing in the dirt this weekend. So enjoy your ancient pigments. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.